YNW Melly, his real name is Jamel Demons. He's actually in plain clothes in the courtroom for the first time in months, again, as this judge really starts the long process of seating a new jury.
He decides to flip and become a cheese eater.
Sir, lastly, and I want to make it very clear on the record, and it's unrelated to this negotiated change of plea, I guess at some point after the fact, the state wants to take a proffer from you or have a discussion with you, ask you some questions about whatever that may be.
The courtroom went silent, and then chaos. YNW Melly's face dropped like he'd just seen a ghost. Because what the prosecution showed him wasn't just evidence. It was a straight-up bombshell, the kind of thing that doesn't just shake a trial, it nukes it. For years, Melly's been screaming he's innocent. But when that new footage, that new photo, that new file hit the big screen, you could literally feel the air leave the room. It wasn't a plot twist, it was a full-blown implosion. The internet lost its mind instantly. Twitter detectives clocked in like it was their shift at the FBI. Reddit lawyers started decoding every word the judge said. TikTok went feral. Everyone suddenly had inside sources and courtroom cousins. One fan even said, "This new evidence just turned this case from a question mark to a horror movie." And Melly? He couldn't hide it. The smirk, gone. The confidence shattered. The man who used to rap about surviving anything looked like he just met something even he couldn't outsing. People in the courtroom said he fell back in his chair, holding his face, shaking his head. Some say he whispered something under his breath. Others swear he just sat there frozen. Whatever he saw, it hit deep. This isn't just another celebrity trial anymore. This is the internet's biggest obsession colliding with the dark side of fame, loyalty, and betrayal. Because that new evidence didn't just change the case, it changed everything. Get ready, because this isn't your regular courtroom drama. This is a storm of secrets, lies, and leaked files. And for YNW Melly, it looks like the truth just pulled the trigger. The courtroom energy was different that morning. Reporters sat in silence. Lawyers whispered to each other like something massive was about to drop. And even the judge looked uneasy. Like they all knew this day was going to go down in history. YNW Melly, dressed sharp but tense, walked in with that usual calm face, the one fans had gotten used to seeing. The same grin that once said, "I got this." But this time, his smile didn't reach his eyes, because deep down, everyone in that room felt it. Something big was about to unfold. For months, the case had been dragging on. Witness testimonies, cross-examinations, social media drama, and wild theories from every corner of the internet. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared anyone for the evidence that was about to hit that courtroom like a thunderclap. The prosecution walked in like they'd been waiting for this moment their whole lives. No smiles, no smirks. Just that quiet confidence that says, "We brought the bomb." The screens turned on, the lights dimmed slightly, and then, boom. Evidence number 347, according to the court clerk. What it showed wasn't public at first. The footage was described only as critical visual material. But within seconds of being played, the entire courtroom gasped. People leaned forward like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. One journalist later wrote, "It was like watching a ghost rise out of thin air. Whatever was on that screen, it changed the entire atmosphere." Melly's reaction said it all. This wasn't the confident artist who once rapped about walking through pain and laughing at his enemies. This was a man blindsided, his jaw tightened. His eyes darted between the screen and his defense team, and that trademark calm broke into raw panic. He leaned forward, covered his face, and shook his head slowly. The kind of movement that screams, "No way this just happened." The prosecution didn't say much. They let the silence do the talking. They knew what they had was heavy. They stood there, hands folded, watching the room soak in every second of the footage. Melly's lawyers scrambled to object, but by then, the damage was done. The crowd's whispers filled the air, and even the judge had to bang the gavel multiple times just to regain control. Now, let's rewind. Because for anyone who hasn't been following this case, YNW Melly's trial has been a non-stop rollercoaster since day one. This isn't some random artist catching a small charge. This is a murder case that's been haunting the rap world for years. The accusations that Melly was involved in the deaths of two of his closest friends, YNW Juvie and YNW Sackchaser. The story behind it reads like something straight out of a hip-hop tragedy. Brotherhood, betrayal, and blood. From the start, Melly's name carried controversy like a crown. The same lyrics that made him famous. Songs like Murder on My Mind became part of the prosecution's argument. They tried to use his music as evidence, like his bars were confessions instead of creativity. Fans screamed that it was unfair. Critics said it was karma. And through it all, Melly sat in court looking unbothered, like he knew something everyone else didn't. Until now, because when that new evidence dropped, the energy shifted. The confident rapper who once winked at cameras looked like he'd seen his whole world collapse in real time. The footage reportedly included ballistic patterns, GPS data, and what some described as unreleased visual footage. And when those dots started connecting, the silence in that courtroom was louder than any verdict could ever be. One reporter tweeted right after court recessed, "You could hear people breathing heavy. Even Melly's team looked stunned." Within minutes, the story hit the internet. Breaking. New evidence shown in YNW Melly trial shocks courtroom. That headline exploded everywhere. YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram. Bloggers were editing thumbnails before court even adjourned. You couldn't scroll without seeing Melly's face, his expression frozen mid-shock, paired with words like "done," "new footage," and "end of the line." But the internet did what it always does. It split in two. Half of the people online were celebrating like they'd solved the case themselves. "I told y'all he was guilty. The evidence don't lie. It's over for him." The other half clung to hope like it was oxygen. "They faking evidence. It's all a setup. Free Melly till it's backwards." Fans started dissecting screenshots and blurry images as if they were analyzing ancient scrolls. Everyone became an expert, and no one wanted to wait for facts. Meanwhile, inside that courtroom, the tension was boiling. Melly's defense team demanded a break, claiming the footage had been misrepresented. They looked frustrated, desperate even. His lawyer leaned toward him, whispering fast, and Melly barely nodded, his face pale, eyes unfocused. It was like watching a man realize the walls were closing in, brick by brick. And that's when the prosecution went in for the kill. They started pulling up phone records, text logs, timestamps, stacking the story piece by piece like they were building a digital noose. The pattern they drew wasn't just suspicious, it was cinematic. You could almost hear the collective gasp as everything lined up too perfectly. One tweet summed it up. "It's not just evidence anymore, it's a storyline." Then came the biggest blow. Rumors spread that someone, a former associate, had flipped. Word on the street was that a witness had come forward with new statements connecting every dot the prosecution needed. Nobody could confirm it, but the whispers were loud enough to drown out any other noise. Fans started guessing who it was. Names flew around like confetti, and before long, the internet had already chosen its villains and victims. By lunch recess, the courthouse was swarmed. Reporters outside were shouting into cameras. Fans were holding up Free Melly signs, and YouTubers were already filming reactions live. It wasn't just a trial anymore, it was a digital war zone. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. Everyone wanted to be the first to break something. Meanwhile, inside those four walls, Melly sat back in his chair, staring blankly at the table. You could see the exhaustion, the fight draining out of him. His lawyer patted his shoulder, but he didn't move. His eyes were glassy, lost somewhere between disbelief and defeat. The man who once said, "I'm smiling through it all," finally looked like he wasn't sure he could smile anymore. And here's where it gets real. This wasn't just about guilt or innocence anymore. This was about legacy. The name YNW Melly once meant music, hits, and chaos, but now it meant tragedy. He went from being the next superstar out of Florida to the centerpiece of one of hip-hop's most haunting legal sagas. Every update felt like watching a candle burn from both ends. Slow, painful, inevitable. By the time court ended that day, Melly's face was everywhere. His reaction, his tears, his silence, all frozen into memes and headlines. But for the first time, the jokes weren't funny. Even some of his critics admitted that look in his eyes said everything. Because whether he's guilty or not, that day in court made one thing clear: no matter what happens next, YNW Melly's story will never be the same again. The streets were whispering, the fans were crying, and the world was watching. Something deep had shifted, not just in the courtroom, but in hip-hop itself. The man who once rapped about murder on his mind had now seen the evidence that could define his entire life. And for the first time ever, it looked like he didn't want to see anymore. By the next morning, the courtroom had transformed into the most watched theater in America. Every outlet, from TMZ to courtroom YouTube channels, was replaying the clip of Melly's face collapsing under the weight of that new evidence. The man who once rapped about walking through hell looked like he'd just seen it open up beneath him. But outside those court walls, things were even crazier. The internet had turned into one giant investigation board. Everyone had their theory. Some claimed the new evidence was audio of Melly during the aftermath. Others swore it was digital tracking data showing his exact location. A few wild ones insisted there was never-before-seen dashcam footage. Nobody really knew what it was, but everyone acted like they did, and the rumors spread faster than wildfire on gasoline. One TikTok with 3 million views said, "That new evidence connects every dot. It's game over for Melly." Another said, "If that footage is real, the jury doesn't even need a lunch break." But the reaction that mattered most wasn't the internet's, it was Melly's. Because word started leaking that he didn't just break down once. He completely lost it when court resumed. Eyewitnesses said he sat hunched over, eyes red, barely able to look up. Others claimed he muttered something about being betrayed. One reporter described it perfectly. It wasn't anger, it wasn't fear. It was like he realized the story wasn't his anymore. And that's the thing about fame. When your life becomes a public trial, the truth doesn't matter as much as the narrative. The prosecution knew this. They started building their argument like a movie script. Each witness a plot twist, each image a cliffhanger. When they showed those text messages, the crowd gasped like it was an episode finale. "This isn't evidence," one fan tweeted. "This is Netflix." Meanwhile, Melly's defense tried to hold it together. His lawyer argued that the new evidence was taken out of context, that it was a manipulation of time and location. But the damage was done. Once the jury saw the pattern, the GPS data, the messages, the footage, their expressions changed. You could feel the shift. What used to look like curiosity now looked like disbelief. Outside, fans were in emotional chaos. Some were still screaming, "Free Melly till it's backwards!" Others were quietly deleting old tweets defending him. A few die-hard supporters started crying on TikTok lives, swearing the system was out to get another black artist. It turned into a cultural war, justice versus loyalty, truth versus identity. Melly wasn't just a rapper anymore. He'd become a mirror reflecting everyone's bias. Then came the celebrity reactions, because of course, they did. Artists who'd stayed quiet started picking sides now that the case looked real again. Boozy posted, "This shut getting deep." Lil Durk liked a post saying, "Even the real ones fold when the truth hit." Kodak Black simply wrote, "Pray for bro." Every post was dissected like scripture. Fans turned one emoji into entire conspiracy threads. The memes were relentless. People photoshopped Melly's shocked face onto courtroom movie posters. Some even edited "Murder on My Mind" lyrics into fake evidence slides. The internet can't tell the difference between empathy and entertainment. It feeds on both. But behind all that chaos, there was a darker reality forming. Every day that passed, the case started looking less like maybe and more like definitely. Reporters leaked that the prosecution had more digital evidence coming, potentially linking phone pings, car movements, and security cameras. It sounded like an entire FBI-level production. Fans joked, "They building the Avengers of evidence," but the defense looked crushed. Every move they made felt like a desperate attempt to slow down a tidal wave. And the worst part? The prosecution wasn't done. They dropped another surprise. A new witness. Someone close to the case. The crowd froze when the name was whispered. Everyone had the same thought. Someone flipped. That moment changed everything. Rumors spread that it was an old friend, someone who used to ride with Melly. If true, it was betrayal on a cinematic level. Fans started digging through old photos and music videos trying to find clues. "Look how he looked at him here. He knew." This whole time he was plotting. It turned into a full-blown online witch hunt. Meanwhile, the jury sat in stunned silence. Each new revelation landed like a grenade. And Melly, he just kept sinking deeper into his seat. The tears were real now. Not the kind you hide, but the kind you can't stop. The man who once bragged about never folding looked folded by fate itself. And that's when social media flipped the switch again. The same people who mocked him hours earlier started saying, "Man, this getting sad." Suddenly, sympathy crawled back into the mix. People started realizing that no matter the outcome, this was tragic. A young man, once destined for greatness, now watching his own career, his freedom, and maybe even his life slip away. One courtroom exhibit at a time. But Melly's fans aren't just emotional, they're loyal like soldiers. They started spinning theories again, this time about how the industry was setting him up. Every artist who goes independent gets hit with charges, one viral post claimed. They scared of real power. Others said the case was being pushed because hip-hop needs a scapegoat. The comments were endless. By the afternoon, the courtroom was packed again. The judge had to tell people to stop recording. Even the bailiffs looked overworked. Melly's mother showed up, looking exhausted, wiping her eyes as cameras flashed. The sight broke fans online. Seeing his mum like that hurt, one tweet said. It was no longer just about the law. It was about loss. Then came one of the biggest moments yet. A photo. The prosecution displayed a still frame allegedly pulled from a piece of digital evidence. It wasn't bloody, it wasn't graphic, but it was powerful. It tied together everything they'd been hinting at. And when it appeared, Melly just looked down, shaking his head slowly, almost whispering to himself. That image spread everywhere within minutes. The Shade Room posted it. Academics posted it. Even mainstream outlets like CNN picked it up. Every post had the same caption. YNW Melly reacts to shocking new trial evidence. The photo became iconic, the moment the world saw the mask fall. Back online, YouTubers and podcasts erupted with theories. This case just took a dark turn. The evidence is insane. Melly might be done. Every title screamed sensationalism, but the truth beneath it was that everyone was addicted to the story. People who didn't care about rap were suddenly courtroom junkies. It wasn't about Melly anymore. It was about the spectacle of downfall, and that's the cruelest part of fame. Everyone loves to watch you rise, but they live to watch you fall. The same fans who screamed "GOAT" in 2018 were now quoting his lyrics with sadness. The same media that hyped his genius now dissected his pain for clicks. By the end of that day, it didn't matter what the evidence truly proved. The public had already decided. To half the world, Melly was guilty. To the other half, he was a symbol. Another artist destroyed by a system too quick to punish and too slow to understand. But in that courtroom, one thing was clear. This wasn't just about law. It was about loyalty, loss, and how fast a dream can turn into a nightmare. The truth was no longer black and white. It was blood red, messy, and playing out live in front of millions. And as Melly sat there, head down, tears drying on his face, one thing was undeniable. The story wasn't over. It was just entering its darkest chapter yet. By the third week of the trial, the courtroom didn't feel like a courtroom anymore. It felt like a reality show with higher stakes and no happy ending. Reporters filled every corner. Influencers lined up outside like they were attending a red carpet premiere. And fans stood shoulder to shoulder chanting, "Free Melly!" over flashing cameras. Every single day felt like the climax of a Netflix episode. Except this time, there was no pause button, no script, and no guaranteed comeback. Inside, Melly looked hollow, not broken, just emptied out. Like every headline, every leak, every whispered betrayal had drained him of color. The man who once walked into court smiling, throwing peace signs, was now quiet, barely making eye contact. He wasn't just fighting charges anymore. He was fighting an entire narrative that the world had already decided. And when that new evidence became the anchor of the prosecution's closing argument, you could feel the mood shift from speculation to sentencing. The prosecutors moved like predators circling wounded prey. Every exhibit they pulled up, every word they uttered felt rehearsed for the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," one of them said, pacing slowly, "we're not just looking at coincidence. We're looking at a pattern, a story told by the evidence itself." The jurors didn't blink. You could almost hear their thoughts racing. Then the courtroom lights dimmed again, and another clip played. Short, blurry, but powerful. The prosecution called it corroborating footage. Fans online called it the moment everything changed. It wasn't graphic, but it was chilling. You could feel it ripple through the room. Melly froze like his body forgot how to breathe. His lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him off. The clip played on, and when it ended, the silence was suffocating. You didn't need legal training to see it. The moment Melly's entire case shifted from maybe to probably. And as that clip looped across every major media outlet, fans online began facing what they never wanted to admit. One viral tweet summed it up best. "I still love his music, but that video, that changed everything." But here's the thing about the internet. It doesn't do empathy, it does obsession. The same platforms that built Melly into a legend were now dissecting his downfall frame by frame. YouTubers uploaded body language analysis videos, claiming to know his guilt just by how he blinked. TikTok users posted teary-eyed tribute edits, while dramatic music played in the background. Reddit threads debated motive like they were part of the jury. Everyone wanted a piece of the tragedy. Meanwhile, new whispers hit the media. Allegedly, the prosecution had a mystery file they hadn't shown yet, something from digital recovery experts. Fans dubbed it the final nail. Speculation went wild. Some claimed it was voice recordings. Others said it was never-before-seen texts. The rumors were so detailed, they sounded real, even when they weren't. And that's the curse of a viral trial. The lines between truth and narrative blur until they're the same thing. Behind the scenes, sources close to Melly's camp said he was breaking down mentally. Days of isolation, pressure, and headlines had chipped away at his composure. One insider allegedly said, "He's not eating right, he's not sleeping. He's just staring into space." His family tried to visit, but security was tight. When his mother was finally allowed in, she reportedly broke down in tears, whispering prayers as guards stood outside the room. Fans online rallied again, flooding hashtags with support messages like digital candles. But sympathy doesn't change verdicts. Then came a shocking twist. A former associate of Melly's gave an interview to a podcast. Without naming names, he hinted that there's things in this case the public doesn't even know. The clip went viral instantly. Every outlet ran with it, twisting his words into new headlines. Some said he was defending Melly, others said he'd just confirmed everything. The damage was irreversible. Once again, the internet had turned a cryptic sentence into a narrative bomb. By the time closing arguments arrived, the courtroom was a pressure cooker. The prosecution hammered the evidence, the timeline, and those haunting visuals. The defense tried to dismantle it all, claiming inconsistencies and data manipulation. But no matter how passionately they argued, you could feel that the scales were already tipping. Melly sat motionless. No tears now, no panic, and just silence, a deep, eerie calm. It was as if he'd accepted that his fate was no longer in his hands. Some called it faith, others called it surrender. His eyes darted to the ceiling once or twice, like he was talking to something only he could see. When court adjourned, chaos erupted outside. Fans screamed his name. Paparazzi yelled questions. The police had to form barricades to clear the area. The clip of Melly walking out, head down, shackled, surrounded by cameras, became the defining image of the trial. It looked like a movie, except this time, the pain was real. And while the world argued about guilt and innocence, the deeper tragedy went unnoticed. This wasn't just a case about crime. It was about how fame amplifies destruction, about how the internet doesn't just watch, it devours. The same energy that once made YNW Melly a star was now chewing him up, one viral headline at a time. He wasn't just being tried in court, he was being tried by the culture. Even rappers who once shouted him out now distanced themselves. Some deleted old collaborations. Others stayed quiet, afraid of backlash. In an industry obsessed with image, silence is the new survival. Only a few brave ones, like Boozy and 21 Savage, publicly said, "Free Melly." But even those posts came with disclaimers now. Then came the final twist, a leak that nobody saw coming. Screenshots surfaced of alleged jury discussions, suggesting that the new evidence had deeply influenced deliberations. Whether real or fake, the screenshots spread like wildfire, and within hours, the internet had already decided the verdict. "It's over," one user posted. The evidence buried him. That night, the hashtag #IPrayForMelly trended globally. Even his haters were posting it, realizing the human side of the story was impossible to ignore. Because beyond the controversy, beyond the trial, was still a young man barely in his 20s. Trapped in a system that doesn't forgive mistakes, especially when fame is involved. By the final day, all eyes were on that courtroom. Every sigh, every glance, every silence was analyzed in real time. Reporters typed furiously, fans prayed, critics smirked. And Melly? He sat still, staring straight ahead as the judge spoke. His expression was unreadable, calm, empty, maybe even relieved. Because when you've been living in chaos this long, even bad news can feel like peace. Outside, thunder cracked across the sky as if the world itself was reacting. Rain poured down over the courthouse steps, soaking the crowd. But they didn't move. They wanted the story to end. Even though deep down, they knew, with YNW Melly, the story never really ends. Whatever the verdict, one thing was certain. This case had rewritten the blueprint of fame, fear, and fallout. The boy who once sang about demons now stood face to face with his own. And whether guilty or not, the world had already judged him. Not by the evidence, but by the echo of his own lyrics. That's the brutal truth about celebrity in the internet age. The same camera that captures your rise will also live stream your fall. And for Melly, that fall wasn't just a headline. It was history. Because long after the courtroom clears, the hashtags fade and the fans move on to the next scandal. One image will remain: YNW Melly frozen in that moment, watching his own story collapse around him. A superstar, a sinner, a symbol, and proof that in this world, fame doesn't just give you power, it puts you on trial forever. And that right there is the cold, twisted truth of the YNW Melly saga. A story that started with viral music and ended with viral evidence. From Murder on My Mind to this courtroom breakdown, we've watched one of hip-hop's most unpredictable artists become the most controversial case in modern rap history. The fame, the followers, the chaos. It all came crashing down in a courtroom that felt more like a movie set than a justice hall. Because let's be real, this trial wasn't just about guilt or innocence. It was about power, perception, and the price of living too loudly. Melly isn't just fighting prosecutors. He's fighting the internet's addiction to drama. Every tear he sheds becomes a meme. Every reaction turns into a headline. That's what makes this so wild. We're not watching a trial anymore. We're watching a generation's obsession with spectacle. And whether you love him or hate him, you can't deny it. YNW Melly changed the culture. He blurred the lines between music and madness, between reality and performance. He became a character so big, even he couldn't control the script anymore. But behind the mugshot, behind the chaos, there's still a human being. A 24-year-old who played with fire until the flames turned into floodlights. So now it's your turn. Hit that like button like it owes you bail money. Subscribe before the next courtroom twist drops, and drop your thoughts below. Do you believe Melly's breaking point just became his redemption arc? Or is this the final chapter in one of rap's darkest stories? Because here on The Rap Truth, we don't just tell the story. We drag it into the spotlight, kick the door open, and make sure nobody walks away pretending they didn't see what really happened. Stay tuned, because the next headline might be even louder, even crazier, even more unbelievable. In the rap game, peace is temporary, but chaos is forever. This is The Rap Truth, where scandals don't sleep, truth comes with bass, and every fallen star still shines under the courtroom lights. Courtroom lights.